There is a sap extracted from birch bark that bonds permanently to wood, repels water for centuries, and kills the fungi that rot timber. Neanderthals used it 200,000 years ago. Norwegian wooden churches sealed with it in 1150 AD are still standing. The roofing industry generates $150 billion per year, selling you petroleum asphalt that lasts 25 years. The birch tree still grows, the sap still works. Not because the sap underperforms. Norwegian wooden structures sealed with birch and pine tar have stood through 9 centuries of North Atlantic rain, freeze cycles, and coastal wind without roof replacement. The asphalt on your roof will last 25 years on a dry summer day in a temperate climate. Not because the sap is rare. Birch trees cover more land area in the northern hemisphere than any other hardwood species. The bark is a byproduct of timber operations that currently goes to waste. Not because the process is technically difficult. The tar has been produced from bark using heat and a clay vessel since before agriculture existed. Not because anyone proved it inferior. The roofing industry has not conducted a comparative durability study against the Norwegian structures. The structures are still standing. The study would not generate the conclusion the industry needs. Subscribe to and hit the bell. The next story opens soon, 200,000 years ago in central Italy, a site called Campitello Quarry in Tuscany. Archaeologists excavating in 1996 recovered stone flakes with a dark adhesive on their surfaces. The adhesive was birch tar. Laboratory analysis confirmed it. The tools were Neanderthal. The birch tar bonding their stone points to wooden hafts was 200,000 years old, still present, still adhered, still chemically identifiable as the waterproofing compound produced by heating birch bark. This was not the first or last Neanderthal birch tar site. A site at Königsaue in Germany yielded birch tar tools carbon dated to 80,000 years ago. The Neanderthal who pressed a stone tool into fresh birch tar 80,000 years ago produced an adhesive that European soil did not decompose for 80 millennia. The roofing asphalt installed on American homes in the year 2000 is failing now. The Neanderthal birch tar is still in the archaeological record. The production process that Neanderthals developed requires 3 things: birch bark, heat, an enclosed space that limits oxygen. When birch bark is heated in the absence of oxygen, the organic compounds in the bark undergo pyrolysis. The cell walls break down. The volatile components drive off as gas. What remains condenses as a dark, viscous liquid, birch tar. The Neanderthal who discovered this process did not have a chemistry degree. They had a fire and bark, and the empirical observation that the dark substance the bark produced when it partially burned in an enclosed space was useful. The most useful substance they had encountered. The substance that sealed their shelters, that waterproofed their tools, that kept the rain off the wood that kept them alive through European winters that would have killed anyone in a leaking shelter. The knowledge of birch tar spread from Neanderthals to modern humans through observation and practice. The same technique that produced the Campitello tar 200,000 years ago was being used across Europe by anatomically modern humans by 40,000 years ago. Not because they invented it independently, because the technique worked, and the people who used it survived better than the people who did not. The tar that sealed shelters from rain was the tar that kept firewood dry. Dry firewood produced fire. Fire produced warmth. The chain from birch tar to human survival in European winters is not complicated. The Mesolithic period, 8,000 to 12,000 years ago, produced extensive evidence of birch tar use across the sites that archaeologists have excavated in northern and central Europe. Paddle fragments, tool handles, and container repairs all show birch tar adhesive. The people of the Mesolithic were not primitive in their understanding of the material. They were sophisticated in their application of it. Archaeological analysis of Mesolithic tar samples shows evidence of controlled pyrolysis temperatures, suggesting that producers understood the relationship between heat level and tar quality. Higher temperatures produced thinner tar that penetrated wood grain more deeply. Lower temperatures produced thicker tar with better gap-filling adhesion. The people producing these tars had no thermometers. They had practice and observation and the feedback of whether the result worked. Bronze Age Europeans who inherited this knowledge applied it to boats. The oldest boat fragments from Bronze Age Scandinavia, dated to approximately 3,000 years before the present, were sealed with pine tar, not as an experiment, as standard construction practice. The boat builders of 3,000 years ago understood that unseasoned wood soaked in pine tar would resist the water that untreated wood absorbed. Absorbed water rotted wood. Rotted wood sank boats. Pine tar prevented both outcomes. The boats that crossed the Baltic and North Seas in the Bronze Age were sealed with tar from trees. The boats that did not use tar did not survive. The Vikings refined this knowledge into a civilization spanning maritime infrastructure. The longships that crossed the North Atlantic to Iceland, Greenland, and eventually the coast of North America were maintained with a continuous application of pine tar. The tar was applied to the hull planks before launch. It was reapplied at every haul-out. It penetrated the wood grain and occupied the space that water would otherwise fill. The wood that absorbed pine tar did not absorb seawater. The wood that did not absorb seawater did not rot. The ships that did not rot crossed oceans. The Roskilde Viking Ship Museum in Denmark holds 5 Viking longships recovered from the Roskilde Fjord, where they were deliberately sunk around 1070 AD. The wood of these ships, treated with pine tar before sinking, survived 950 years of submersion in brackish water. When archaeologists raised the ships in 1962, the wood was still structurally present. Pine tar had continued to protect wood submerged in an estuary for nearly a millennium. The roofing contractor who installed the asphalt on your roof did not promise it would outlast a decade in those conditions. The Norwegian stave churches are the most visible evidence of tar's structural longevity above ground. Borgund. Stave Church in Sogn og Fjordane was built approximately in 1150 AD. It was sealed with pine tar on construction. It has been resealed with pine tar periodically across its 900-year lifespan. The structure is still standing, still watertight. The original wood of the 12th century church has not been replaced because the tar prevented the water damage and fungal rot that would have required replacement. The maintenance required is a bucket of pine tar applied every generation. Not a roofing contractor, not a replacement cycle, a bucket. The Ørnes Stave Church, older than Borgund, is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and dated to parts of the 11th century. It is still standing, sealed with tar. 900 years of rain hitting the same wooden roof, repelled by the same compound, produced from the same trees that grow in the same forests today. Here is the chemistry. Simple. Birch tar and pine tar contain phenolic compounds. Phenols are organic chemicals with one specific property that matters for wood preservation. They are toxic to fungi. The organisms that rot wood are fungi. Fungi require moisture to grow. They also require an environment free of phenolic compounds. A wood surface penetrated by pine tar is an environment saturated with phenolic compounds. The fungi that cause roof rot, the white and brown rots that destroy untreated wood within 5 to 15 years of exposure to rain, cannot establish in a tar-treated surface because the phenols prevent their growth. The tar does not merely sit on the surface and repel water. It kills the organisms that would use the water to destroy the wood beneath it. 2 mechanisms of protection from one application of tree sap. The petroleum asphalt on your roof repels water through a different mechanism. It forms a physical barrier. The barrier works until it does not. Thermal cycling, the expansion and contraction of the roof surface through heating and cooling, stresses the asphalt. UV radiation from sunlight oxidizes the organic compounds in the asphalt. The surface becomes brittle. It develops microcracks. The microcracks become penetration points for water. The cycle of damage begins. The damage is not repairable with a new coat of asphalt. It requires full replacement of the membrane. The business model of the roofing industry is built on this irreparability. Pine tar on a wooden roof does not fail through the same mechanism. The tar penetrates the wood grain rather than sitting on the surface. When the wood expands and contracts with temperature changes, the tar moves with it because it is inside the wood rather than on top of it. There are no surface cracks because there is no surface layer to crack. When the protective phenol content of the tar diminishes over decades, a new coat is applied. The new coat penetrates the existing tar-treated wood and restores the phenol concentration. The maintenance cost is the cost of the tar and the labor to apply it. It is not the cost of tearing off the old roof and starting again. The transition from tar to petroleum asphalt happened in the same 2 decades that transformed every other traditional building material in America. The post-war housing boom of the late 1940s and 1950s required construction at a scale and speed that traditional materials could not supply. The demand for roofing material that could be manufactured in factories, shipped in standardized quantities, and installed by workers without specialized training, selected for petroleum asphalt and against pine tar. Pine tar required warm application. It required workers who understood wood grain penetration. It required dry conditions for proper absorption. Asphalt shingles could be nailed on in rain by any laborer with minimal training from a standardized package and 20 minutes per square of coverage. The scale of the post-war construction demand made the comparison obvious. Millions of homes needed roofs. The roofing material that could be factory produced in unlimited quantities won. The roofing material that required a forest, a pyrolysis process, and a skilled applicator lost, not because anyone decided to suppress pine tar, because industrial capacity selected against it. The result was the same. A 900-year building tradition was replaced by a 25-year replacement cycle in the span of 1 decade. The building code followed what was being used. What was being used was asphalt. The code referenced asphalt. Pine tar disappeared from building specifications without anyone formally deciding to exclude it. Now the industry numbers. GAF is the largest roofing manufacturer in the United States. Their annual revenue exceeds $3 billion. Their primary product is asphalt roofing shingles. The shingles are petroleum derived. They are manufactured in factories. They have a warranty of 25 to 30 years. When they fail, they require complete removal and replacement. A complete roof replacement on an average American home costs between $8,000 and $25,000, depending on size and material. Across the approximately 140 million housing units in the United States, the replacement cycle generates tens of billions of dollars in revenue per decade. CertainTeed, a subsidiary of Saint-Gobain, generates billions in annual roofing revenue. Owens Corning's roofing division contributes significantly to their $10 billion annual revenue. Johns Manville, a Berkshire Hathaway company, manufactures commercial roofing membranes. The National Roofing Contractors Association represents the installation companies that complete the replacement cycle. Together, this ecosystem generates $150 billion per year globally. Pine tar cannot sustain this ecosystem. It cannot be manufactured. It is produced from bark that grows on trees that cannot be owned or patented. The production process is simple enough that any person with access to birch or pine bark and basic equipment can produce it. A roofing material that homeowners can maintain themselves with a bucket of tree sap does not generate contractor revenue. A roofing material that requires maintenance rather than replacement does not generate manufacturer revenue. The compound has no place in a business model built on the replacement cycle. The building codes that govern roofing specifications in the United States are developed by the International Code Council. The ICC's technical committees include members drawn from the construction and building materials industries. The codes they develop specify approved roofing materials and installation methods. Pine tar on wooden roofing is not listed in current building codes as an approved application for residential construction. The Norwegian stave churches sealed with it for 900 years are not cited in the building code footnotes. The code does not prevent a homeowner from maintaining an existing wooden structure with pine tar. It simply does not recognize pine tar as an approved roofing system for new construction. The difference between approved and unmentioned is invisible in a system where builders follow codes to avoid liability and inspectors approve only what codes reference. The Scandinavian tradition of pine tar wood preservation has not disappeared. The bark that produces the tar is stripped from trees that continue growing after the bark is removed. The bark regrows. The tree lives. The tar is applied. The wood lasts. The cycle does not require a factory. It does not require a petroleum refinery. It does not require a replacement contract every 25 years. The Borgund Stave Church scheduled its next pine tar application in the same way it has scheduled every application since 1150 AD. When the previous coat showed signs of weathering, when the wood surface began to gray, when the maintenance cycle that 9 centuries of practice had established indicated the time had come. The church does not consult a roofing contractor. It consults the same maintenance tradition that has kept it standing for 900 years. The tradition is older than every roofing company currently operating. It will outlast them too. Subscribe to and hit the bell. The next story opens soon.